This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, with our episode for the Laws of Game. We're going to incorporate the Laws of Game plus the Game of Thrones. What we're going to talk about today is the Faceless Man Strategy, subtitled as The Power of Planting Seeds, Episode 1. And this particular series is going to be more than one episode, might be two episodes, might be three, but we definitely know it's going to be more than one episode. So this is going to be part one of this particular series. The biggest challenge that a lot of people have is that they want to bring change. They want to get into a position. They want to have power. They want to have influence. And often they think there's going to be one single event that's going to bring that out. And that has a lot to do with our conditioning. We get a lot of conditioning that this one event happened and everything changed. And this one event happened and the person had a breakthrough. As opposed to really understanding a lot of times the change that you want in this world is gradual. And it may not happen at the speed that you desire. However, if you can keep pushing things down the road to get what you want, that often can be more effective than you trying to get it to happen at one time. And a lot of it has to do with our conditioning. You know, miracles are real, but a lot of the change in the world is not the result of a miracle. It's a result of gradual change. Most people are in the position that they're in because they gradually put themselves in that position, whether good or bad. A lot of times people look at the last event as the only event without understanding is that often there was a series of events that got to a certain situation, not just the last event that everybody paid attention to. People really got to understand that. People also don't understand causality, but that's a different topic. This is going to be a really good video for people that want to understand how to get what they want to get in the world, right? By utilizing a very incremental, right, long-term strategy, as opposed to hoping that there's going to be this one-time event that's going to get them what they want. Now, this is going to exclude the majority of the world. Why? Because most people are socialized to think that what they want should happen overnight. If it doesn't happen overnight, it means it's not working. Therefore, I should do something else. Or they have a very, very short time frame in which they should look for results, as opposed to understanding that the time frame, a lot of times, to really get what you want out of this world can be long term. Because if you want big things, you can't assume that they're going to happen in a short period of time, right? And that's who this particular audio or this particular video is going to be directed at. And the other 99% of the world, they can look for the 90, 60 day, 120 day turnaround to believe that something does or does not work. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it. In this particular fantasy world created, and we're going to reference a TV show, not the books, because I didn't read the book. I just watched the TV show. And we understand that they can differ. In this particular fantasy world created by this particular television series, I think it's Arya Stark is her name. I could be pronouncing it incorrectly. She meets a character named Jack and Hagar. And she learns through this particular relationship with that character the skills to be, what we'll classify as an expert assassin. And as a result, she had this skill, right, and the ability to survive her journey to get in position to be the person who kills the Night King. Okay, so she got into this particular relationship with this character, and she was able to develop the skills and continue to survive in the world that she was living in to get to a position where she could kill the Night King. And many people, that is their total understanding of this particular story, right? But what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of look into it at a little bit of a deeper level, right? And what I want people to understand is this. Many people in that universe understood what was going on, even though they may not have proclaimed it or announced it. And what I mean by that is that we see in the episodes that, Jon Stark being exposed to the Night King. We see other people having an understanding of the Night King. And we're made to believe these are the only people that knew about this scenario. However, the Faceless Men, pretty much before everybody else understood what was going on, there were also other people. There were people that were members of that particular faith that worship, I think, the Red God. They also understood what was going on. They just didn't proclaim it, and the story was not based around their particular perspective of what was going on in the world. And what we got to understand is that the Faceless Men, as a group of people, knew what they wanted to do the whole time. And Arya Stark really was just part of their larger plan. And that's what a lot of people really got to understand. And we're going to kind of examine this because I'm going to get you to understand the power of planting seeds, right? And how powerful this is, right? However, you have to have a different perspective on the world and also of power to really understand how this works. And we're in a world where we're not taught to want to actually have real power in the world. We're taught that, these ancillary things are your power, and, a lot of things that really are not the real power in the world. We're taught to seek that and therefore we're not competing for the real power in the world. And if you look at this particular universe created, there were very few people in this universe really competing for the real power. The majority of Westeros and, even the world outside of Westeros, the average person had no desire to really be in competition for the real power in the world. It wasn't something they even worried about for whatever reason. And therefore, we have to understand is that many of the lessons that are going to allow you to go compete for real power, one, the average person is not going to be interested in it. Why? They don't want real power. They want the material stuff. They want the attention. They want the the acclaim. They don't want the real power. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right? It just means that they're not a good candidate for certain things. Therefore, we're wasting our time teaching it to them because they don't want it in the first place. And they're never going to execute on what it's going to take. You got to understand is that the Faceless men really understood where the real power in the world was at. They understood it way before these particular characters in this universe were even born. So this is not something that these individual people created. This was something that was part of their particular brotherhood or sisterhood or fraternity, whatever you want to call it, where they understood what a real power in the world was actually at. And therefore they figured out, well, we're going to utilize Arya Stark to help us get the real power in the world. So she was part of their plan. Now, what was their plan? Their plan was to eliminate the threat of the Night King. That was their plan the whole time. And Arya Stark was never supposed to be a faceless man. Right. And the reason why is because she did not have the psychological aptitude for the role. And we're going to probably talk about it in later sessions, why she did not have it. Right. She never had the psychological aptitude to actually be a part of this secret society. And unlike a lot of fraternities or places, they very much were interested in your psychological makeup more than just your physical ability. OK, if you didn't have the right psychological makeup, you weren't suitable. And this was shown in the episodes multiple times that Jaqen realized that you don't have the psychological makeup to really be a faceless man. Right. You don't really have it. However, she was allowed to continue certain levels of training. Why? Because she was part of their bigger plan. And that's what people really got to understand. And we're going to kind of go into this because it's something that a lot of people really don't talk about. And, I could probably blow up with a Game of Thrones channel, but I don't want to talk about Game of Thrones that much. But these channels are really, really popular on YouTube, especially during the time in which the series were going on. But they'll probably pick back up when they redo I think they're getting ready to drop the series on the Targaryens. But that's a side point. Arya she learned just enough around the Faceless men to be effective at her role. And I want people to really understand that. She really never learned their deepest secrets. Why? She didn't hang around long enough. Okay, she never really learned their deepest secrets. She learned just enough to be effective at her role. That's what she learned. Okay, she didn't really learn the deepest secrets of being a faceless man. She learned just enough to go back into the world and be effective at her role. And people really got to understand that. But the little bit they taught her made her very effective. Why? Because the majority of that particular universe didn't know any of that stuff. Right? She learned stuff that had been developed over years to make you effective in certain scenarios. You understand me? And what we got to understand is that the Faceless men courted Arya, if I'm saying her name right, Arya, using dark persuasion. They manipulated her using dark persuasion. And she was really their best chance to get what they wanted to get out of the world because they kind of understood where she was coming from. And I want you to really see that. And we're going to kind of break that down so you can utilize these particular lessons and try to implement this in some of what you're doing. And we're going to show you some of the Easter eggs in this particular storyline that show you the power of planting seeds, right? So let's go ahead and get into it because that's kind of like my opening monologue. So the first Easter egg, right? And this is something that a lot of people should have saw once they really realized who the Faceless men actually were. So let's say you had never read the book, but you're just watching the movies or watching the series. Once you understood what the Faceless men really were, this particular scenario should have jumped out to you, right? But everybody doesn't have the ability to kind of make connections like that. Jaqen was trapped in a cage and he asked Arya Stark for help to get out. Right? Now, the question you want to ask yourself once you really realize, right, who Jaqen Haggar is, because really Jaqen Haggar is not really Jaqen Haggar. Jaqen Haggar is just a name that he's presenting in this particular scenario, right, for what he's trying to do right now. But there really is nobody named Jaqen Haggar once you really start to understand what's going on. But we're going to use this name just to create a reference point. So Jaqen Haggar asked Aya for help. Now, the question you want to ask yourself is that, how does a capable assassin get trapped in a cage and then needs a small child to help save their life? How does that happen? Because once you understand what they taught Aya, right, and she was only with them for a short period of time, okay, how does a capable assassin, right, once we saw what this man was actually capable of, how does he get trapped in the cage to the point where he needs a small child to help him get out? And this was part of the plan from the gate, because she was being courted. And so they took her through a process of being, most of y'all have never been courted before into something, into a situation, into an organization, into a neighborhood, and you don't kind of understand how this works. We use this term on the internet called groomed as if it's a negative term. The question is, what are you being groomed to do? Many of you have been groomed without even knowing it, but you didn't know it because it was so subtle. The question is, what have you been groomed to do? So, we produce, a lot of guys have been groomed to jump on the internet and complain about stuff. But these are grown men. They've been groomed to do that. And the more they do it, the more they've been groomed to keep on doing it. They haven't been groomed to go do anything in the real world about their situation. So everybody's been groomed to do something. The question is, what have you been groomed to do? But now in this new era, we use the term groomed as if it's a negative term. Or, he's grooming her. She was groomed. Everybody's been groomed to do something. What have you been groomed to do? Exactly what you're doing right now. That's what you've been groomed to do. Therefore, they were grooming her, right, for what they wanted her to do. It's not a negative term. It's the intent of the grooming. And the reason why they put this scenario together is because they needed Aya to feel like Jaqen was in debt to her and to give her a sense of power. And this is going to come into play later. So they had to create a scenario where Ira, if I'm pronouncing her name properly, would feel like Jaqen was in debt to her. And then therefore it would give her a sense of power. Now, here's the next thing. So she helps Jaqen get out of this particular scenario. Now, she is fleeing. She's a fugitive from what is going on with her family. She's under a lot of pressure. She's under a lot of stress. She's living by her wits. She's also living under a disguise. So she's acting like she's a boy when in reality she's really a girl. And what happens is she's working at a place called Harrenhal, and Jaqen appears at Harrenhal where she's located. Right? So now she's surprised because she know that, well, I helped this guy here, and then next thing you know, he pops up and he essentially is acting as a member of the Lannister army. So this is kind of weird to her, right? Because she doesn't understand what the Lannisters are dominating King's Landing. How did he end up incarcerated in King's Landing on the way to the wall? So she's kind of confused. But you got to understand is that this is all part of the plan. And he always understood what was going on. And then he reaches out to Aya and says, you know what? I know that you're operating as a boy, even though you're a girl, but I'm going to keep your secret. And he also congratulates her on keeping the secret. So he reaches out to her and says, hey, you know what? I know what you got going on. You're doing a great job. And he congratulates her. This is all still part of the courting. So now she knows a secret about him. Why? Because she knows that, hey, I help you get out of this cage. You're really not a member of the Lannister army. And he knows a secret about her. He tells her, hey, I know you're really not a boy. I know you're a girl, but you're doing a great job keeping this secret. He's continuing to court her. Right? Then he tells her that he owes her 3 lives for her past to help him. Right? So because of her past help to him, he now owes her 3 lives. Now, why did he do this? He's putting himself in debt to her and giving her a sense of power. This is all part of the courting. And this is going to be very appealing to a child that has lost everything. They feel powerless, right? They feel like everybody's against them. And now he's going to give you a sense of power, right? So because of what you did for me in the past, you know, I operate on this particular code that I now owe you 3 lives. So for the 3 lives you helped save, I was in one of the 3. I owe you 3 lives, right? And so because you saved me, I will go kill 3 people on your behalf. Now, this sounds like a weird proposition, but you got to understand, she's in a very desperate situation, and he knows that. Because he knows exactly who she is. He's not confused about who he's talking to. And he tells her, well, look, here's the deal. And what does she do? She takes him on the deal. So now once she took him on the deal, he got her. She didn't say, well, you know what? I don't want to get involved in that. That's not, that's not something I want to include myself in. Once she agreed to that, he got her one step closer to where he wanted her to go. You understand that? Now, what he does now is he introduces her to name killing. So what is name killing? Give me a name and I'll go kill him. And then he does this at Heron Hall. So he just lets her know, hey, give me the name of these people and I'll go kill them. And he's very successful at that. So he follows through with all the killings. And after the first killing, Aya is very much consumed with this sense of power. She knows now I can strike back at people that have done something wrong with me. That's very appealing to a woman that has seen her whole family destroyed by another group of people, and she can't do anything about it. You got to understand the manipulations that's going on. But if you think manipulation is a negative word, you think that's negative. But he's manipulating her in a way to where she now feels power. She understands that this is a man that can help me get back at my enemies. And I don't feel as alone and desperate in the world because I feel like I got an ally on my side.